Hey, good evening. Got another one on deck. This one's a Rapido RS18u, Ottawa Central 1815. This is another commission. Got the silver paint out to start. Just doing the ends of the MU hoses and some of the other details on the front, such as the door handles on the cabs. And of course, switching around to do the back MU hoses as well. Okay, now I'm switching over to painting a little bit of red detail here. Using those two paints in the background there. One's a liquid air and the other one's just a craft acrylic red. Yep, using those two I painted around the bell mount. There was a bit of a strip of red around there. Thought it was a fine detail to pick out. And then that's pretty much it for this color. So I went over the brake wheel on the front there with the previous color, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So I'm adding a bit of blue to the mix here, making it a bit purpley, and that's going to kind of, I guess, darken the red a bit. It's a little bit too orange. According to the photographs, it's more of a maroon color. So I'm just hitting up that brake wheel with this color. Now I'm switching over to do some rust on the cab using raw sienna and country twill. Those are the folk art craft acrylics. And what I'm doing here is I'm doing the biggest part of the rust. So this is the base, and I'm slowly going to build each color up on top of the base here. So I did notice there was a bit of rust on the cab roof and as well as next to the window on the cab. So I'm just picking these things off very, very, very small dots right now. So this light beige color is the base of the pyramid for the rust dots. This is going to be the perimeter, and I'll keep adding darker and darker rust tones as I get toward the center of these dots. So while I've got this color out, I'm going to spritz the cab roof with a little bit of 70% IPA and mix in some more of that beige onto the cab roof and spread it around. I like to do this, probably you guys have seen this in the last couple of videos as well. I like to do this because it adds a bit of variety when I finally take it down to the airbrush booth. It shows a little bit of a variation in the paint, given the age of this locomotive. So just spreading it around, you'll notice how it actually doesn't disturb the painting, the dots that I just did. I did let them dry, and as long as you're not too vigorous, they will stay. Okay, adding a bit of orange into that mix that I just had. This is the next layer in the dot pyramid here. So, you know, as we all know, different layers add a lot of depth to our models. So this one is an even smaller dot inside those beige colored dots that I was doing. So I'm just using water to mix these acrylics, and that brush in my hand there is nothing fancy. I think it cost me all of about $1. And getting even darker still with the rust, I've got the dark brown there and the red. Added that into the mix, and even finer dots on top of the orange that I just did. So this does give the appearance of, I guess, fresh rust on the outside of the dots and, you know, older rust on the interior. There you can see on the palette there, everything's all laid out on the plastic sheet there. These are my leftovers from my Decoder Buddy packaging. I really like to use them. Probably got about 6 or 7 of these things, all, you know, showing the history of my painting. But now you can just pretty much dab any color you want, mix any color you want, and just keep adding it in if you don't like a certain tone. So I'm going into the lighter orange now. You know, I can make that a bit darker if I want by adding a bit of red and squeezing in a bit of brown if I want. But yeah, once you get the palette going, you can just dab and dip. Okay, now I've just spritzed the whole roof there with 70% IPA, and I'm going in with some, what I think is CP Action Red, or the CP Rail Red. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I believe this one, given the history, was a CP Rail engine. And I don't have any good roof photographs of this engine, so I'm just kind of winging it based on other engines that have kind of shown some of the red peeling. More specifically with the Trillium Railroad, they have some red showing through the roof. So I figured this one's probably going to do the same thing. You might be thinking that's a lot of red, but again, this is the pre-coat before I hit the airbrush, so I'm not too concerned with how vibrant that is. I just want to get it down. Okay, finished off with the red now, working on the short hood here. This thing got a lot of dust on it, so again, hitting the short hood there with some IPA and mixing in some dust color and just letting it roll around and puddle in different places. Don't have to be too specific there. So my first go on the cab roof is now dried, and I can hit it up again with the IPA and the loose mix of dust, and just basically take that all the way down the long hood. This gives a nice little bit of variety in the paint, as I was saying, and yeah, I recommend doing it and not worrying too much about it, because you'll see what I do when I get down to the airbrush booth. And just like the cab roof, I'm hitting this up again with another coat of the CP red, and that's just to make it a bit more vibrant. As I do things in washes, they're not very opaque, so this is just going over it again. And if you haven't been following along, the reason why I'm using the 70% IPA is so they don't get the kind of dried water stains that you would get on like a shower door. The IPA kind of helps the paint stay all over the place instead of forming around the perimeter of the dot of water. It cuts surface tension, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, as long as you don't go too vigorous, you can get away with 50% IPA as well. And I think some people actually use dish soap too. So noticing some of the photos there's some gray chipping on the sides of the short hood. So I'm just mixing that pewter gray and a little bit of white, and putting some of the gray dots on either side of the short hood there. Yeah, another bonus, I guess, of using the IPA is that it dries fast, evaporates. This is a bit more of that pewter gray and white mix on a couple of the doors at the back. And you know, that looks kind of silly right now, but again, heading down to the airbrush booth, that pewter gray was also used for the filter. I guess the filters that they put in the screens there. Those are, I don't know if they're cloth or whatever, but they're the ones, a couple photos I saw, they weren't completely black. They were actually freshly installed. So they're kind of like a beigey gray color. So putting those in, they're not going to stay like that. You'll see what I do down in the airbrush booth again. So a lot of this stuff is pre-paint. The wheels, obviously I'm doing the faces that you see. The way I do this is I do what I can see. Fairly thick mixture of burnt umber and black, and sometimes I put in a little bit of raw sienna as well, depending on the faces, if they're really rusty or if they're kind of like a rail brown color. So I do what I can, and then I put it on my test track and run it half a revolution and do the other part of the wheel that's now exposed after running the engine for a little bit. Little bit, I mean like, 1 centimeter. And I keep putting it back on the test track until I get all the faces covered. Yeah, so, and I usually go over this a couple times to get a nice thick job on there. So yeah, almost done the wheel faces, and I think after this I head down to the airbrush booth. Okay, the first thing I'm doing here is putting a bit of rubber black down. So this is basically going over the entire engine, getting rid of the shine, dulling down all of those paint effects that I just did upstairs, and I'll go over with different blacks. But first off, I want to kind of turn it from jet black like it is into a very kind of a darker gray. So what you want to remember is to not concentrate in any one area. You want to keep moving around, spraying very lightly in certain areas, letting that dry. It only takes maybe 15 seconds for the stuff to dry. So starting again, going over the roof, just darkening it or covering up my brushwork a little bit more. Again, go over everything lightly so you don't go too far. Yeah, one of my pet peeves is getting paint on the windows too. I think kind of just doesn't look so good when you're finished. So remember to tape over most of the windows. I didn't tape the back of the cab windows because I knew I wasn't going to be spraying in that direction. But yeah, definitely cover those windows with something. Just using up the rest of the black paint in the cup there, hitting up the underside of the engine, getting the shine off of that, and yeah, I did put quite a bit of black in the cup. So in the cup now is to me a flat black. This is black and black and black. The intention here is to show and highlight the creases along the door edges, and also show the exhaust coming out of the stack at the roof there. So this is one of the first things I'm doing. I'm just tracing all of the crease work in the panels, and I like the effect of this. Actually, it looks pretty cool. You can do that. I guess somebody actually tonight was doing, I think it was Doug Sword, he was doing this prior to putting a Conrail blue color on. But I guess if you're just working with a black locomotive, you can actually use rubber black for the base, and then you can go over it with flat black as well, and it does show quite nicely. So that heavier strip coming over the Ottawa Central logo there is the diesel dust flowing off the roof in that area, and running over the walkways. But now I'm back up doing another coat. After my first pass is dried, I get to see what's happened when it does dry, and I wanted obviously to put a bit more on there. If you're comfortable, you don't necessarily have to mask off certain areas. I'm just spraying as I wish, and you'll see me come in here now and just clean up with a Q-tip. I find that's a lot faster, and really there is no detriment to doing it this way. Some of the overspray is actually quite nice, but yeah, this I'm just preparing this right now for the next step. Okay, so the diesel dust on the roof I didn't really see showing up too well. The blacks were too close together. So what I've gone and done is mixed a little bit of gray into the black, and I'm going back over the roof. And now I'm spraying the edges, not in the middle, to try and highlight that diesel spray, or the diesel accumulation, I guess, the diesel dust accumulation. And also just adding some highlights using the same color throughout the engine. So this one I'll just highlight the middle of each door, and leaving the creases blacker. Also using the same color to go around all of the intakes, not spraying any of the vents. I'm spraying around the perimeter of the vent to try and make those look a bit darker as well. So total time for this spray, just the airbrush portion, was 1.5 hours. So I probably compressed it down to maybe 10 minutes on this video. But there's a lot going on in just actually looking at the model and picking out which colors you want to do next and which areas you want to hit next. So it is a longer process. I like using the paints on the silver trucks because it really highlights things. Right now I'm just putting a base coat of a slightly rusty dust color. That's mostly on the top of the trucks. Interesting thing I noticed in the photographs was the bottom of the truck frames in a straight line was very, very clean. And the only thing I think was doing that was this thing's probably running on some pretty unkept track with tall grass. And as the train goes through these, pretty crappy track areas, it's probably getting cleaned off. The bristles or the top of the grass, the seeds on the grass are probably scrubbing the truck frames up to a certain height. So yeah, you'll see me kind of rub the bottom of the truck frames with the Q-tip to keep it clean. Well, that same color is being applied to the battery boxes on both sides of the engine. This is going to act as a base. What I ended up doing with this one is dabbing on some powders, actually. Looking at the prototype photos, it was it was one of those things that either required sponging or dabbing of powders. I couldn't mimic that with an airbrush, but I could put a base coat down. Same with the fuel tank here. It's like a bit of surface rust. So I'm kind of mimicking that with putting a base coat down, and I did go over that again with some medium rust powders. What I'm attempting to do here is mimic the prototype here. There's a lot of lines coming down and streaking down this yellow strip on both sides, and it's coming from the bottom of the stanchions as well as in between. And there's probably a good 40 skinny stripes of rust coming down through this yellow stripe on both sides. So with the airbrush, I'm just putting a base down, and then I went upstairs and used oils and some powders to actually fill in the stripes themselves very thinly. I'm trying to be as thin as I can with the airbrush on this as well. As you'll see, some of those things got too fat, so I did rub them out with a Q-tip and try again. And while I got some paint left in the cup, I decided to run around all the walkways and give them a bit of a rust tone. For those of you who are new to my videos, you might think that I'm a bit crazy for going and just spraying all this stuff on without any kind of tape or anything. What I do with any overspray that kind of might creep its way up the long hood is I do follow up with a bit of a darker strip along the base, just to, you know, blend it in. Okay, coming up to the end of the airbrush session now. Just going over the walkways with different colors, adding a bit of variety. None of these walkways is ever the same color, especially after decades of use. So again, doesn't matter how many colors you use. This is the finished product after going over with oils and powders, and also flicking up some kick up on the insides of the fuel tank and the ends of the underside. This one's on its way back to Ottawa now, and I guess thanks very much for watching, and appreciate all the recent subscribers, and I will be following up with another couple engines. I've got another RS18u to do.